Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Some Assembly Required, Organizing Freethinkers. I'm Stephen Olsen. I'm a comedy writer, but I'm also the former president of the Springfield Freethinkers in Springfield, Missouri. The purpose of this podcast is to encourage more people to start local freethought groups and to help those who already are running freethought groups get a little bit more input and advice on how to run them. So the theme for this episode is getting started, which is appropriate since we're just now getting used to this whole Google Plus thing. And I'm sure we will be doing this theme a number of times since that's the whole purpose of the show. Joining me is Maria Walters and Scott Rhoades.
Hello.
Hi. And Maria is a fellow skeptic. And Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about your group?
Sure, yeah. I am the former president of the Atlanta Skeptics. I was one of the founders of the group, so I'm pretty familiar with starting up an organization. And I actually am no longer running the group. We've passed the gauntlet on to others, but it's still going strong, doing very well.
Excellent. And how about you, Scott?
I'm the president of the Lancaster Freethought Society in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Our group's only about a year old, but we grew so rapidly that growing pains were inevitable, but we got over those hurdles and we're doing good right now.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did to get your group started?
Me or?
After me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Maria. Let's start with you. Maria, how did you get your group started?
I don't know what just happened.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's very weird. I disappeared for a minute.
Huh.
So I'm sorry. What were we saying?
Did
you want me to start?
Yeah, if you could start by telling us a little bit about how you got the group started.
Sure. So I guess it's been about 4 or 5 years ago now. There was a fairly decent skeptic community in Atlanta, but we really didn't have any organization to us. And some folks Dean and Taylor Proctor were, we all kind of got to know each other, mostly through TAM. It was kind of funny, but a bunch of us actually met, not in Atlanta, but at TAM. And so we started talking about getting Skeptics in the Pub started. And we initially started it out just by doing a pure social event. So we set it up to do a monthly meeting. We found a bar that allowed us to take over a room. In fact, the first couple of times we were small enough that we didn't need that. And then we kind of took that to the next level. So initially, I think sort of the most important things that we did in terms of getting started were we had something very regularly. So we made sure we had at least once a month, and we tried to do it actually on the same day, the third Saturday of every month. And then the second thing was we joined Meetup. And that really helped us a lot to get the name out. We really didn't do a ton of, just general advertising or anything like that, but we found more and more people just showed up because of Meetup, because they were searching for skeptics in the area, or they had alerts on skeptics or atheists or whatever in the area, and our name came up. So that's sort of how we started. And then probably a year or so in, as we started to get bigger, we decided to move to the format of having a speaker every month. And that was very popular, and we So our current format is we are still doing this. We do a speaker once a month. The speaker is about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we do questions on top of that, and then we have social hour after that. People can hang out if they want to. And we've grown and grown. We started in the smallest event room in the bar, and now we fill up the largest one. So it's actually been one of our challenges is to find the space for ourselves as well.
We had similar problems with that with Springfield Freethinkers after we started as Skeptics in the Pub.
Yeah.
How about you? Scott, tell us a little bit about how your group got started.
Well, this area is a little bit different than your areas probably because it's Lancaster is not a large city. It's surrounded by a sea of Amish, Mennonite, and conservatives. It's probably one of the most religious areas outside of the Bible Belt. But the city itself is like an island, much like Austin is in Texas. An island of liberal in a sea of conservative. But so I started out with some simple Facebook ad, not even a Facebook ad. I started out on Facebook contacting some local people that I knew were atheists, and I also got lucky that a podcast, I forget which one at the moment, but graciously did an advertisement for my group for the first meeting, and our very first meeting consisted of 3 people, along with myself. Now we've had meetings as large as 35 people in less than a year. So we're growing by leaps and bounds. Much like she mentioned, meetup.com was a valuable resource. About a month or 2 into the group, I found a group on meetup.com that was in the area but had lain fallow for a while. They had no activities for several months. The person that was running it had his own business and just didn't have the time to do it anymore. I contacted him, and he let me take over his group and rebrand it under Lancaster Freethought Society. And that meetup group now has 147 members. I think most people with groups will tell you, even with people with Meetup and Facebook, that the online membership usually dwarfs the people that actually participate. But I'm happy. We have probably 40 people that participate in different events and different, our pub nights, our meetings. Our meetings usually consist of some kind of presentation. Either I will give it, or we had one of our members speak already on he's a psychology student. So and then some question and answers and some general discussion as well.
Yeah, I think we have very similar experience. So I actually just went and looked it up because it's been a while since I checked. And our meetup group was founded on March 1st of 2009, and we are currently at 612 members. That definitely doesn't translate into the number that we get, but we usually get between, I would say, it varies, but between 30 and 60 people, depending on the room size and things like that. So, and we actually, there are 2 rooms that we have available. One is a little smaller, so if we're in the smaller room, we actually cap it. And Meetup actually does a really good job of allowing us to do that and have a waiting list, and it takes care of a lot of that stuff for us. The other component I think that we did a lot of is we tried very hard to involve our members as much as possible. So we started out, one of our big challenges, and I think every group has this challenge, is how do you get speakers? And it started out as I did one, and then Tim Farley did one, and then Adam did one, and and so we kind of recruited from within a lot. The thing that was interesting was in parallel with that, or very shortly after we had started it, we decided we wanted to do a skeptic camp, and so Skepticamp was hugely valuable for me as an organizer, because what I did was take note of all the people who did presentations and ask them to expand them when I thought they were particularly good ones. I told them, hey, would you expand this for Skeptics in the Pub? And that worked out really well. It would usually give me, 6 or 7, maybe more people every year to use as speakers. And the other component to that is we were very lucky as well with Atlanta, because at this kind of very much at the same time, the Dragon Con skeptic track was growing. And of course we have Derek and Swoopy from Skepticality who are local, so they were very helpful in kind of getting the word out, but also just kind of establishing this skeptical presence. And every time we did a Dragon Con, and as SkepTrack got bigger, people were like, oh, this is really cool, and oh, by the way, there's a local presence, and that brought in people as well, just to let people know that we existed.
I wish I had resources like that in this area.
Well, it's interesting, because what I found is that even if you don't have local people, a lot of groups will very happily, a lot of podcasts will very happily help you or advertise or mention you. The Skeptic event calendar is something that I highly recommend people send an email to events@skeptic.org, and we'll put you on the events calendar, so at least people who are searching for stuff in the area, we break that out by state, so you can see if you've got something going on in your area. It's a good way to kind of get stuff going. And so I have found the organizations, the larger groups, to be hugely helpful in just giving advice and helping out wherever they can. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And I also cannot recommend Skepticamp highly enough. I think even if you start small, like we did, you will be, and I was, every year we did it, surprised at the number of people that we got to participate and the quality of the presentations we had. And every year we got people who we'd never seen before, who were just brand new, who just heard about it and decided they wanted to come. And again, we did very little advertising. I mean, we did some, but not a ton. So I highly recommend that as kind of a once a year kind of grow your group kind of a thing.
Maria, just forget my ignorance for a moment, but could you expound a little bit on what Skepticamp is?
Absolutely. So a Skepticamp is a concept that Reed Esau from the Denver Skeptics kind of came up with, and he based it on the concept. If any of you are in the IT world, there's a concept of bar camp, which is it's sort of called an unconference. So it's participant-driven content, and what you do is you have a very skeletal infrastructure that you put in place as the organizer, and then you allow the participants to provide the content. So the way that we did it is we got a room, and we had we did actually do like T-shirts and a few other things, but we basically had a room and a time, and we let people sign up, and we said you get to present for 20 minutes over the course of the day, you don't have to be an expert in the field. You just have to be somebody who's interested in skepticism. And a lot of the times we got people who were like, I'm really interested in this aspect. I want to do a little bit of research and then present what I found. And then on the other side, we had college professors who had a lot of experience and wanted to do the same thing. And the whole concept behind Skepticamp is it's very community driven, and it is for somebody like me who's a little bit of a control freak, it's a little scary. It's a lot scary, to be honest, because you really have to sort of set it up and then walk away and just let it organically grow. Yeah. That was a very nerve-wracking in the beginning, but after we did it once, I was like, okay, this really does work, and it's really, really cool to see what comes out of it. And you can get more information. I believe it's skepticamp.org. I'm going to look that up real quick, and we can put it in the show notes as well, which has a lot of interest, a lot of good information on it. There's a wiki. Yeah, skepticamp.org.
And I'll just briefly go over the formation of my group, since I wasn't the person directly involved in it. I inherited the group after all the hard work was done. But basically, in Springfield, Missouri is where we have Skepticon. And some of you might be familiar with that, but it's a 2 or 3 day conference in Springfield run by the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which is a bunch of great people. So pretty much the people who got the Springfield Freethinkers started saw that there were a ton of little groups. There was one in the Ozark suburb. There was one in Republic, and there was like 3 or 4 small ones throughout Springfield. And so basically what he did was, Jonathan Krause and the 2 other founding members did was they talked to these people and said, hey, are you using this? Why don't we just pool our resources? And they got a bigger group going that way. Because Springfield isn't really big enough to have specialized neighborhood-centered groups, in the same way that a larger city like New York could. And so using that and the resources from Skepticon and the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, we were able to get a ton of members. And also stalking people on Facebook was one of the methods. Pretty much Jonathan would go and see if somebody's religious views were listed as Jedi. And that gave him quite a pool to get from. My wife, that's how I got her into the group.
Yeah, that's great.
I did similar on Facebook. I went through I went through everybody in my area that I could find and looked at their religious views and kind of sent them a link to see if they're interested.
It's a very tedious way to do it, but it does work.
Well, I mean, I think it just sort of shows how valuable that personal contact can be, because even if you contact 10 people and they contact 10 people, and it can just grow very quickly from there. And I think there's a lot of value to telling people, hey, tell your friends. The other thing that we did that was kind of fun and helped us grow in a weird sort of way was we established a firm rivalry with the Denver skeptics. So we have this, and it still goes, we have this ongoing thing that our Skepticamp's better than their Skepticamp. We sent them, when we did our and Skepticamp started in Denver. And so we last year or a couple years ago, we coined the phrase Skepticamp, founded in Denver, perfected in Atlanta. And so we just kind of have this ongoing thing with them, and it's kind of fun, and it brings people in, and it has people wonder what's going on, and it's kind of a silly, fun thing to do.
Yeah, it kind of just brings to mind a mob rivalry kind of situation, where as your way of getting back at them, you send them the severed head of a psychic.
Well, actually, it's funny you would say that, because what we did was every Skepticamp we tried to do something special for Denver. And the first year, all of us, we took our big group picture, and then we also took a big picture that said "Suck it, Denver," a big sign that said "Suck it, Denver." And we did something. One year we had a cake in the shape of a pony, which is another story, but it was basically because Taylor Proctor, who was the organizer, kept saying, I want a pony for Skepticamp, and so we made her a pony. And so when we cut it up, we kept the head and took a photograph of that and sent it to Denver.
Wow.
So, a little friendly rivalry. Yeah, yeah, we came pretty close.
I'm checking the stream now to see if anybody has questions yet.
Yeah. How do you do
Someone
that?
said hi. I don't think that counts.
Come in? Hi.
You click on the video.
Well, while you're doing that, I'd like to mention the Facebook group that I also admin. It's called Freethought Group Organizers. 667 members at present, I think. And this is not a Facebook page where people go and post the latest atheist pictures or anything. This is 667 organizers. It's for organizers only. It's a valuable resource. The depth of talent and experience on this page is astounding. People like Dr. Darrell Ray are on it. It's just Rich and Deanna Lyons go on it. The leaders of the biggest free thought groups in America and in India, in Canada, in Britain, in other countries that I'm sorry if I'm forgetting you at the moment. But you can go on and ask a question. You can tell them a problem you're having, and 10 to 1, somebody had that problem and has made the mistakes for you already.
Right.
And
so you don't have to.
I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a fantastic group. It's where I'm getting the majority of my guest selections for this podcast from. And yeah, I love it to death. I actually tried a similar thing, and you did a better job than I did, so I kind of gave up on it, because it's like I had like 80 people in mind, and then I saw yours, and you already had like 300 or 400 by that point. So I'm like, you win. You're doing better at this. I give up.
Well, we got to a stage where I'm sorry.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, we got to a stage where we saw your group actually, and talking about the friendly competition thing. The
decided
rivalry.
to destroy them.
Yeah, we decided to do it way better. But we went on Meetup.com and did a search. Derek Johnson did this, who's also an admin on there, along with Tracy Hamilton. Those two are the two that started the group, and I came on shortly after they started it. Han Hills is also an admin, don't leave him out. But we went on Meetup.com, searched for all the groups that had atheist, humanist, skeptic, anything like that in their title, and it came out to 400 and some groups. We divvied up the list and just started contacting people one after the other. And I got lucky to have the Friendly Atheist, Meta, put a post on his feed about the group, and right after that we have another surge of membership. So 667 people right now, and all organizers. It's amazing. Now, you don't have to be a president or a group leader to be there. You can also be a committee head. You can be a board member, somebody who has some function of actually doing organizing within your group. But I can't recommend it enough. And it's not just to horn. I've gotten so much advice myself off of there.
It's, in a way, like, this podcast is kind of like developed out of that need, because I think every organizer who's listening or watching right now could probably tell you that they've encountered a problem where they just don't know what to do. And having a pool of resources for people who've dealt with that same situation is completely invaluable.
Yeah, I think there are very common threads that everybody goes through, and so I think I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to answer some of that, and also give people resources like the Freethought Organizers Facebook group and others, to be able to point them. I actually wanted to mention something that you guys kind of touched on, which is when you're looking to start a group, make sure there isn't already a group out there, or if there are, if there's a way to kind of consolidate. And also look at student groups. So the Secular Student Alliance has chapters in most major universities in the country, and they have resources and can help and want to work with local groups as well. And so I highly recommend. Yeah, they're good people, and they're a lot of fun to work with. So, and yeah, CFI on campus does the same thing. So yeah, check your local universities, because they're usually tons of good people to help out, and good resources as well.
Definitely in the future, I'd like to do an entire show dedicated to the SSA and student groups. JT Everhard is actually one of my best friends. We were roommates for a while. We're writing a book together. I'm taking advantage of that resource and having him on to talk about that. Yeah,
absolutely.
I actually had some students in my area, some high school and college students, ask me about helping form groups in their schools, and I can help you, but I said, these guys do it better. They know what they're doing. I pointed them to SSA and said, contact them, because I told them I'll contact them for you if you want, but they'll do it 10 times better than I can.
Right, right.
Now, just briefly, we've mentioned Meetup.com a few times, but it just occurred to me that not everybody watching or listening knows what Meetup.com is. Basically, if you have a club you want to start based around any activity or ideology, you could start up a group for it. and it isn't free. It's $72, I think, for every 6 months, last I checked. And they give you a lot of good resources. They can be annoying at times whenever they change up the format without telling you. But as a general rule, like if you have a group, you really should have a meetup and a Facebook page. But the Facebook page part's free.
Right, and we also have a website and a blog. Again, there are costs associated with those things, a Twitter feed as well as a Facebook feed, and there are costs associated with that. So be aware of that. I mean, they're not going to be huge, but it's important to know what they are, and make sure that you're and it's not usually when you have a group, it's not that hard. You can collect money during a during your Skeptics in the Pubs, have everybody toss in a buck every time you do it, and you'll be able to fund stuff like that. And we've honestly had a lot of good luck with fundraising. We've done a bunch of fundraisers over the past few years, and have just come up with different ideas and different things that we can do to try to raise money. And we could probably have a whole other conversation about that.
I would suggest for anybody thinking about starting a group to try doing things through Facebook or based on the real-life connections that you already have before you just go to Meetup. Like, I wouldn't, like, as the only skeptic in the community, start a Meetup, throw over my money. But once you have a community started, I think it's a good resource to have.
Definitely. That's exactly what we did. We started out with just a Facebook page and a couple of friends and just grew it from there.
A couple things to mention though. Meetup actually you can have up to, I believe, 3 accounts for each account, 3 Meetup pages, 3 groups. You can share that resources with other free thought groups. Everybody can throw into the pot. Each can have their own group on that. Out of that. Another thing is I get 3 to 5 people a week joining my Meetup group, so it is quite effective. And don't be afraid to ask for money. One of the things I had to get over was being shy asking for money. I actually have one of my board members now that is in charge of fundraising, and she's not shy about it, so that's good. But I had to get unshy myself. And people are going to expect it. I mean, you don't have to be, in their face about it, but every meeting I mention it. It's part of my normal announcements. Well,
as far as raising money goes, it can always be awkward, and I'm definitely guilty of neglecting it for that reason. But I have found that the church model works just fine. Just pass around a cup or a plate or something and have people toss their spare change in it. I usually can get between $30 to $50 a meeting just doing that. And if you have a meeting every week or two, that amounts to more than you need to run Meetup.
Yeah, and we do things like we'll do raffles. So you really need like 1 or 2, like maybe a couple of books. If you have a spare copy of Cosmos or something like that, you can raffle it off. Charge $1 a ticket, and you get, you'll probably get $30 or $40 a meetup. And then we've also done bigger things, but yeah, I mean, we've been very effective in that. And we've also done things like, because Meetup does allow you to charge. So if we have a really cool speaker, we will charge a small amount, and it's usually under $5, but we will charge to say, hey, please help us, particularly if it's a bigger name speaker or we know it's going to have a bigger turnout. We will sometimes have a charge associated with them.
I think there's a certain line when you get so many members that you feel comfortable charging for speakers and stuff like that. A small group, 5 people, somebody shows up to talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's conversation at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that although depending on who it is, a smaller group, it's an even bigger sell, right? I mean, but
to me, that's like 5 friends getting together and one charging to be there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I definitely think the pass the hat is how we started, and is probably the ideal way to kind of get started. And like I said, the other thing that we found is be really honest about what the expenses are, so people know where that money is going. Say, hey, we it's $72 every 6 months for Meetup. It's this much for website. That's what we're trying to raise. That's our goal. And so people kind of know what is happening.
This is what
we
sits on the table at our meetings.
Nice. Yeah.
It's a box I made just to, I don't know if you can, let me see if I can get that there.
Hold on, let me.
Oh, it's reversed or something.
I see it. I can read it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Not bad.
Well, yeah, and that does pretty well for small expenses and stuff to cover it.
Exactly.
We do have a question from the Facebook page. Jane, I'm going to butcher your name. Jane Oxenbein is asking, how did you decide what type of organization format your group should take, and any pros and cons with affiliations with national organizations?
Who wants that? You want me to?
Why don't you go first?
Sure. We chose to be the Atlanta Skeptics. We intentionally did not. We did not want to be. We wanted to be skeptics because we wanted to be pretty broad. Living in Atlanta, there are a lot of atheist groups already, and they're well established. There's the Atlanta Freethought Society. There's the Atlanta Atheists, and they're great, and they're serving that purpose already. What we didn't find was a true skeptical group, and so that's where that came from. A lot of our influence was from the JREF and from just being at TAM and aligning with that label, I suppose, and so that's where we started. In terms of national groups, we've worked with CFI, we've worked with the JREF, obviously, and we've had really positive, great experiences with all of them. They've all supported us. They've donated to our Skeptic Camp fundraising, and so I have, and really the big fundraising that we'll do is for Skeptic Camp, and I have never asked somebody for money and not gotten something. Even if it's a small donation. All the big organizations are very eager to help the local groups do well.
Yeah, with ours, the format has changed quite a bit depending on the time and how many members there were. Like whenever I first showed up, what we were doing was a fortnightly. So every 2 weeks we would meet at the little, it's called the San Francisco Oven, so it's just this little restaurant, and we usually had about like 15 to 20 people show up, and then I opened my mouth and I said, hey, Jonathan, why don't we have a Skeptics in the Pub? And the policy at that time, and I think it's a very good policy for the most part, is he who smelt it dealt it. So because I mentioned it, I ended up taking on that role and putting together the Springfield Skeptics in the Pub, and then it branched out. So pretty much it ended up being if somebody had an idea on what would be a fun meetup to do, because our group was primarily a social group to provide support for other non-believers and skeptics. So yeah, it pretty much just branched out to whatever fun thing you can think of. If you're willing to put in the time to volunteer to put that together, and you're not like a horrible jerk who is a bad representation for the group, then yeah, do it. And as far as national organizations, we pretty much emailed and sent letters to all of them. The only possible downside I can think of is if, if there's some big giant controversy connected to one of the groups, and like one of the national groups, and your members don't want to get involved in that, or they think you picked the wrong side. So that's the only thing I can think of. We never encountered that with my group, if that helps, Jane.
Yeah, as far as the national groups, I have had good dealings with a lot of the people that represent them, but our group doesn't affiliate with any other group just because we want to maintain our own identity. I do agree. I mean, we are working with not as a group, but myself and Brian Fields from PA Nonbelievers are working on a Pennsylvania convention, Atheist Humanist Convention, that's going to be in September with Dan Barker, just to put a plug in there.
That's awesome.
And we got some, we're getting some help from Fred Edwards at the Coalition of Reason. The only thing I say, some groups have their own way of doing. Some are more litigious. Some are more about the big statement, like American Atheists, for example. And when you associate yourself with those groups, you get slapped with whatever label anybody puts those on. Now, that's not saying anything against these groups. They all play their own roles, but we wanted to maintain our own identity, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a common concern with local groups is they want kind of their own autonomy, and that's really important. And I think that you know, that it's important to remember that a lot of these larger organizations are not looking for formal affiliation necessarily, and are actually have you know, resources that they just want to help with. The JREF is a great example. You know, they've got people who will help you figure out speakers and do all of that, and not necessarily they don't have officially affiliated local groups in any way. But their goals are to you know, spread skepticism you know, across the country and across the world, and they realize that local groups and grassroots activism are a great way to do that. And there are also more formal ways to affiliate, and you can, you know, and like you said, I think you covered it very well, that there are definitely pros and cons to that. But I think it's important to reach out to these larger organizations and just kind of see what they can offer you, because a lot of times there are a lot of sort of no strings attached. Here's some help and resources that you guys can have, and it's been very valuable, I think.
We will cover this more when we talk about student groups later, but just while we're on the subject, the Secular Student Alliance has a little packet that explains every single thing you need to get a group started. A lot of it's specific to college groups, but I can't recommend that highly enough. Check that out, especially if you're starting the student group.
And some of them, some of these groups will even help you they'll help you advertise in the local area. So if there are members of the national group in that area, in your area, in your state, they'll help you kind of promote your group to those people. You know, just as
I think the Coalition of Reason is a good example of that. Matter of fact, they don't want your money.
Right.
They only want to help.
Right.
You cannot donate to them.
So, and the one other thing that I would say, not a little bit off topic from what we were talking about right now, but if you are thinking about starting a group, I can't emphasize enough, don't do it alone. A lot of times you can decide you want to do this and take it on, and you don't realize it is work, and it can be very frustrating to be the sole organizer of a group, particularly if it grows quickly. You know, so build a team with people you can trust, and that way you can be an organizer but also have a life. I think it's really important.
Where were you when I started with that advice?
That's pretty much what ended up happening for a while with our group, was that the former president was taking on the whole load. And, you know, when I showed up and said, hey, can I do Skeptics in the Pub? You know, he was thrilled that somebody else was going to be doing some of the extra work for him. And the more people you add to your team, I mean, sometimes you got to manage squabbles, but for the most part, it's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, and I found, like I said, I gave up running the Atlanta Skeptics 2.5 years ago-ish. And it was for a couple of reasons. One was that, you know, I wanted to do something else, and I was a little bit overwhelmed with a bunch of, I'd overcommitted myself to some degree. But more importantly, I wasn't doing anything new, and I thought it was really important to bring in new blood and new ideas. And in fact, we're going through another change right now. The next Skeptics in the Pub that we have in August is going to be a change of the guard again, and we've got new organizers coming in. And it's really exciting, and it's a really positive thing, because no matter how good you are and no matter how dedicated you are, you're going to either burn out or you're going to end up doing the same things over and over again. And you want to be able to expand and grow and evolve the group. And the best way to do that is to bring in new blood.
Yeah, I just got to that situation not too long ago in my group where Darrell Ray talks about it too, about how a group can start with a single charismatic leader and then end up imploding when that leader either leaves the group or something happens. So I was determined not to let that happen to my group, and I have a great board of directors now. Even though we're looking at I should say more than looking, we're working on our 501c3 incorporation right now and so all that, and I simply do not make important decisions on my own anymore, even though I'm not legally required to have them vote on anything right now. We're still practicing as if we are incorporated, as we are a 501c3. Practice makes perfect. But it's hard to let go of the control sometimes. But surround yourself with good people, and I think I have. And it's very helpful. You need to spread out the work a little too, because if you get focused too much on the details, you miss the big picture. You miss the vision, and it can drive the life out of you. I've seen it happen. I've talked to many people in FGO, the Freethought group, and on Facebook, the organizers group, that happened. They're burned out. They had enthusiasm. But once they got into the month-to-month work of the group, the actual work, very few people want to help with that. So try to surround yourself with good people that are enthusiastic. Don't hold it against somebody that they're new to the group. If they want to do something to help, let them. And I agree completely with Steve that you smelt it, you dealt it. If somebody comes to me with an idea, I say, okay, how are you gonna do that? I'll help you, but if you want to bring that idea to the group, you're going to have to help with it.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to actively remind people that your organization is structured in that way. So we get new people with every Skeptics in the Pub we have, people who have never heard of the Atlanta Skeptics, or this is their first meeting. And so with every meeting, I would say, hey, if you're interested in volunteering, let me know. If you're interested in speaking, let me know. And just kind of emphasize that this is something that is a group effort. And you'll get people. And the other thing is with somebody like me who sometimes has a hard time delegating, what I found was valuable is to have things be very clear-cut and defined. So if you say, hey, I need help I just need help in general, people are not going to always say, just come forward and say that. But if you say, I need help with this specific task, is there somebody who can help me do X, Y, and Z? And then you kind of have an understanding of the scope of what is being asked. People are more likely to come help. And then you also can kind of control and see, kind of test people out, see if they're going to do a good job, if you're going to be able to trust them to do more and to take on more responsibility. And I've also found that just in general with delegating, it's always a good idea if you're looking for good talent, kind of keep your eyes on people and go out and actively solicit someone. Say, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. And it's really hard to say no when somebody walks up to you and says, I think you would be awesome at doing this. How about you help me out with it?
None of my board members volunteered for their positions. I went out and directly asked each of them to take those positions.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Every time there's been a board membership open, I've always asked people, hey, you should run. You have chops, you should do it. And I've had people try to argue with me over that. Like, no, I'm not good at that. And then they turn out to be the best people for the job.
Yep.
And build it into your announcements, your every meeting. Ask for money every meeting. Ask for volunteers every meeting. Tell people what you're doing. Do a old business, new business thing. But yeah, you're not going to get the help unless you ask for it. Sometimes you get people that come in the group, they're all gung-ho, ready to go. But most people, come in for the community to start with.
And most people, if you've got a group that's been running for a while and you have a formula that's been working for a while, most people come in and say, hey, this is running great. They don't appear to need any help. So they're not. A lot of times they just don't know, that you need help with specific things. So it's really important to. I know it's kind of obvious, but it is really important to make sure that people know.
Yeah, and it can be very easy to end up being tempted to just put your group on autopilot. Especially with Meetup allowing you to schedule meetups on a recurring schedule. I mean, I still am a firm believer that someone should show up and at least facilitate the event. There needs to be someone there. It is tempting to just let people just show up and do whatever, but that doesn't necessarily work.
Well, and particularly if you have a speaker, because you want that person to understand how things are gonna work, and you just need you need to sort of help them and be appreciative of them too, their time.
Yeah,
we actually have two types of the regular meetings are organized. We have a presentation. There's a structure to the regular meetings, but our pub nights are just show up and having a good time. We do the regular meetings on a weekday, on a Monday, first Monday every month, but we do nights on a Saturday, so people that work during the week and vice versa can at least attend something. We try to mix up the events on different days, so it reaches more people that way.
Yeah, and we also try to do, we tried to have a variety of events. So we started with Skeptics in the Pub, and that was all we did. A couple of years ago, we started doing Skeptics in the Park, because a lot of people have kids and can't come to the pub, or don't drink and don't want to come to the pub. And so it's Atlanta, and we have beautiful weather here. So in the spring and the fall, we do Skeptics in the Park, and we just find a park and we barbecue and we have a great time.
And in the summer, you hide in the AC.
And in the summer, we wait for Dragon Con and hide in the AC, yes.
It can be very difficult, like figuring out when to schedule your events, particularly with Skeptics in the Pub, because you have to compete with all of the other bar traffic. So what we ended up doing with Springfield Freethinkers was we scheduled those on Tuesdays. Because we don't have to fight with anybody to get the big room in the back of the bar on a Tuesday night. Of course, that carries with it other problems, like some people can't go drinking on a work night. But it's been fairly successful. But yeah, definitely like alternating what days you have at different events, I think helps out a lot.
Yeah, we've had very good luck in that the bar that we do our events in has most of the time allowed us to just book every month on a Saturday night, which is rare. So we just lucked out with that. And it does really, for us, Atlanta is so big and so spread out that it's hard to bring people in, particularly on a weeknight. So Saturdays have worked well for us. But we have tried other times as well. We've tried doing it a little earlier on the Saturday, and moving it around a little bit, just to get feedback on what works for people. And I think that's been helpful to kind of understand what people's schedules are like.
Something along those lines is that if you're looking for a venue to have your meetings at, a lot of restaurants have private dining rooms and stuff like that. That if, for example, we meet at a local restaurant for our normal meetings that has a private dining room, as long as we spend at least $100, which with 30 people is not hard because we half them at least have dinner. They treat us well. They give us our own private servers. I can't guarantee every place is going to be like that, but a lot of places will give you the room for free.
A lot of places will give you the room for free, particularly if you do it on a weeknight, because those are nights that they're not going to be busy. And we're really lucky, again, that we have Manny's, which gives us the room for free on a weekend, but I think that's pretty rare. I think most places will have a minimum spend, or will just have a rental fee on a weekend. But on weekdays, you're more likely, because it's a time where they're not going to get that, very many people in.
Definitely. On Mondays when we meet, we dwarf the people in the restaurant by a significant amount. We often have to go out and steal tables from the main room to accommodate our people, and there might be a few tables in the main restaurant with people at it. So the business definitely appreciates this as well.
Yeah, and it does change as well as you get bigger. So now we know we can pretty much guarantee 30 to 40 people every time we do this. So we can tell a restaurant this is what we're expecting, and all of them will drink, and all of them will eat dinner probably, or at least a large proportion of them will. And so they want to bring that in, and they're happy to give us the space. But again, we have the luxury of doing that now that we've been around as long, and we know we have that kind of volume.
One thing I would highly recommend, based on my experience with Skeptics in the Pub, is keep the restaurant up to date on how many people you're expecting. Like, check the RSVPs and let them know at least a week ahead of time, hey, we've got 50 people scheduled to show up. There might be more. Because we had, one of our favorite restaurants, and we can't recommend it highly enough. They've been extremely good to us, but the Farmer's Gastropub in Springfield. Fantastic, but sometimes we've ended up with only 1 or 2 servers for 70 people. So that doesn't work. So make sure you keep them up to date on what to expect, because they'll bring in more people and they'll accommodate you, but they can't do it if they're in the dark.
Yep, absolutely.
And there's always people that come but don't RSVP.
There are.
I always assume at least 10 more than RSVP will show up.
We've quite often been a victim of our own success on our pub nights, where we reserved a table for so many people, or a couple tables, and ended up having to wait until somebody cleared off another table to pull that into the group.
Yep. But it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And then the only other thought that I had around events is something that we do pretty often is look around in the community for museum events that would be interesting, just kind of outings, and those are super easy, right? You just tell people, hey, go buy your ticket. We're all doing it on this night, and they're easy to organize and they're fun. We had a Darwin exhibit. We had a mythological creatures exhibit here. So we've done a couple of different things like that where it's sort of like Skeptics Night Out, and those are great, and again, kid friendly and so on. So it's very helpful.
On that same line of thinking, I think it's important to look for anything science-based or skeptical-based, especially if you have a convention anywhere nearby. And talk to the organizers and see if they'll help you promote your group. We've been extremely lucky to have our membership increase every time Skepticon rolls around. And part of that is because the Skepticon people always make sure that we have a table where we can promote the Springfield Freethinkers. They've been extremely helpful. They've plugged us during the talks, and can't recommend them highly enough. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of the fact that tons of people who don't know there's a skeptical group in the area will be there. You have them in the room with you. Talk to them. I think making pamphlets is fantastic. Just talk about your group on a piece of paper and hand it out. So, yeah, definitely take advantage of events that are in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of years ago at DragonCon, we put together, one of our members put together a "What is Skepticism" pamphlet, and we had on the back we had our logo and our email address. But it was basically a little quick primer on what some of the common terms, because DragonCon is an interesting con because it's not 100% skeptic. There's a skeptics track, but we get a lot of walk-in traffic from people who are just like, well, this sounds interesting, I'm going to walk in, no idea. And I think in the skeptics cons, we tend to use a lot of lingo, and so what we tried to do is come up with, here are just some common things. This is what TAM is. This is what the JREF is. Things that we thought people might, we as skeptics who are in the community know very well, but if somebody just walking in off the street wouldn't know, and that sort of served both purposes in that it gave us, helped folks who were coming in, but also kind of put our name out there a little bit too.
I'd also say look out for local fairs, look out for local festivals, parades. We just did our local Pride Festival here a few weeks ago. We had a booth it was a great experience, very positive. One of the things we do on a semi-monthly basis is an Ask an Atheist event, which is Lancaster Central Market here in Lancaster is I think it's the country's oldest continuously operating farmers market. It's visited by tons of people every week. We set up on the main square right outside the market. We have a sign, Ask an Atheist, and it's by far our most popular event. It gets people in our group. It gets us noticed. We hand out lots of cards. A lot of people come in and give us good wishes, both believers and non-believers.
Sure. Yeah.
People who have genuine questions. You'd be surprised at the people that walk up to you that you think are, just a person you wouldn't think that would have intelligent questions about God or anything like that. And here's this guy, telling about his deep search for meaning, and another person telling, afraid that they don't have control of their own life, that God steps in to control them at certain points. It's a fascinating cross-section, and it's always a positive experience. For the few people that might stop by and shout an atheist is a fool in his heart or something like that, most people are very positive about it, being there. So don't be afraid too. A lot of people are very nervous about attending events like these. They think that the public are going to gang up on them. There's going to be pitchforks and torches, and it couldn't be further from the truth, because when you were in that situation, the people in the crowd, they are the individuals, and they see you as the crowd. They don't see the people around them as backing them up. So you have an advantage in that situation.
It's also pretty hard to walk up and be really rude face to face. It's awfully easy on the internet, but being rude face to face, people will do it, but it's pretty hard. And so I think most people will be civil.
Well, we should probably go ahead and start wrapping up pretty soon. One thing I do want to make sure I mention before we go, this is not from my group. This is from the atheist community of Austin, which I would love to have one of them come on and talk about their group at some point. It's a fantastic success story. But the way they got their group started was they put out an ad in the paper.
Huh.
All they had to do is they just put out an ad and said, hey, are there any atheists around? And they show up. There's people who still read those things, apparently. So I can't help but mention that one.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Anything you guys want to mention before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd like to mention one more thing. I think that no matter what kind of group you're forming, whether you want to be an activist group, a skeptic group, an atheist group, a humanist group, your number one thing you should be concentrating on is community. Your community, your ties to the surrounding community, good works in the community to improve your image, but mostly the community of people that come together. We have a Freethought Society that is a community. We have great families involved. We try to do events for all sorts of people in it, but without that community, you're not going to have success in the other things you're looking for. You're not going to have success in your activism because you won't have that support structure behind you when you're walking a picket line. You're not going to have success in your charity projects because you're not going to have those great families to back you up. You're just not going to have success without that great community. So I think that should be your core goal, is to form that community, and the rest will happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's a great point, and I think that I don't have a lot to add to that. I think that it's really important to have fun and remember that that's important. Don't get too wrapped up in the details that you're not enjoying it. And when you are, or if you're not enjoying it, or if you find that you're not enjoying it, then maybe you need to change your tactic a little bit. But community is really important, and enjoying it is really important, because really you're giving your own free time to this. You want it to be fun.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. So we will be doing more of these, probably on every 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks' time, come back again at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Theoretically, we'll have fewer technical difficulties and hiccups starting out. But we're going to keep on talking about different topics, and this is another topic that we're going to come back to on multiple occasions. So if we didn't cover what questions you had, or you wanted to ask questions but you caught it on YouTube after the fact, don't worry. You'll get an opportunity to ask us. And if you don't automatically get a chance to ask us, go ahead and go on the Freethought Group Organizers Facebook page and bug the people there, because that's exactly what they want to hear, is questions from people who need help.
And if you have suggestions or topics, or if you want to promote your group, email us. It's events@skeptic.org, and we'll get all that. And if you want, things you want us to cover in the future, or questions, anything like that.
Cool. Well, thanks to Derek and Maria for joining me today. And
Scott.
Damn it. I've been talking with you and Derek all day, so I've got it completely mixed up.
I know.
Sorry.
That's how it goes.
So, yes, thank you for Scott and Maria for joining me today. And
thank you for having me.
This is Some Assembly Required.
All right. Bye.
Bye.